Rapid reaction after Iowa Wrestling escapes Nebraska 1916. A recap of what we saw on a Friday evening. Plus, we set the scene for the weekend. A busy Locked On Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. Hit subscribe while you're there. Just takes a moment and helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Well, wrapping things up here on a Friday evening after it goes final, Iowa comes back to beat Nebraska on the wrestling mat by a score of 19-16. We got plenty of basketball talk coming up, including the men's game and really just a gut check type of game coming up tomorrow as they face off against Wisconsin. We'll talk about that. Plus, Tom Kakert from HawkeyeReport.com. He's going to stop in. And we'll talk all things Hawkeyes with Tom coming up here in just a moment. But we open up with the wrestling mat in just really overall kind of an odd match, an odd duel overall on the evening where they handed out state championships on the girls' mat over there in Coralville. It was just I don't want to say, it was one of those meets that you're just kind of left at times shaking your head because there were, I thought, a lot of good things. Overall, there were a lot of good things. And then there were things that left you scratching your head, like Patrick Kennedy. And he comes roaring back down 10-1, comes back, ties at 11, ultimately loses 18-11. Gabe Arnold, what happened to him? A sudden victory loss to Alred. And it's not that Iowa wrestled terribly in the duel, because that's not fair. It was just maybe at times not what you expected. And I think there were some guys that maybe opened our eyes a little bit more. So as we go through, Joey Cruz, like what we've seen from him at times, there are certain matchups that aren't going to be great matchups for Cruz at this point. But I think you've seen enough out of him that you can think, and you can see if he stays at 125, this is a guy that maybe can make a push, and probably not this season, but potentially could be an All-American down the line. Drake Gaiella, not a whole lot of offense there, gets the win 4-2. I think Van D had something to say about that. We know 41's been an issue all year long, and Hardy just took it to Cullen Schreiber. We go to 49, and so Kyle Parko, after what we saw last Friday night against Penn State, I just got run out there. And he beats the second-ranked kid in the country, and Ridge Lovett. The Lovetts, those dudes know how to wrestle, right? Having a lot of success. And yet, in the post-game transcript that's sent out from the University of Iowa, Parko said this: "It was a good match, and it gives me a little bit of confidence going in. Those aren't necessarily the matches I want to win. I'm looking towards other opponents, getting some wins back, getting that Penn State match back. That one still lingers in my mind a lot. So I think this was a good win, good for me, a good win, but I'm still looking towards the future." And that kind of honesty, it's refreshing, because in so many sports, we don't get that. And I think it's a reason that so many people gravitate to what we see in wrestling and learning about these guys, hearing about these guys. Yeah, we get the sport, right? And the aggressiveness and kind of that primal, just absolute excitement that you get out of watching a guy get a big takedown, get a pin, those kind of things. But then you get this part of it too. And this is the part that it's just so different than so many different sports out there. Going in there and saying, yeah, that loss last week after he got drilled by Penn State, it's still lingering. It's still in his mind. He just beat the second-ranked kid in the country. And yet that's not what he's excited about. It's about thinking about going forward. I just found that really interesting and something, again, that you just don't see very often. 57, Miguel Estrada, he was wrestling Taylor, who's ranked fourth. He loses 4-2. Kind of a defense only. And hung around in the match. Galliano got a win. Patrick Kennedy, we mentioned that match, just an absolute crazy one. And then we go to 84. And this is when things started to get all of a sudden nerve-wracking because you come off the crazy match after Kennedy, and then Arnold gets upset. And you're looking and thinking, there's still work that needs to be done. Now, you felt good going into the final two matches for Iowa, and it proved out that way. You get a pin from Buchanan. He was dominating him before the pin. And then Keeter did his thing and got a major decision at heavyweight, but still, just an incredibly odd match. We've talked about it before. Running down Penn State this year, it's not going to happen. I mean, the likelihood of it is so slim. So many different things have to go your way that as a fan, could it happen? Sure. And I guess if you are the optimistic type and you want to sit and hope and wait and plead, you can go that direction. That's just not for me. If it happens, I'll be there cheering. I'll be excited about it. I'll be incredibly pumped up. But just knowing that we're talking about such a small percent chance. So many things have to go wrong for Penn State. So many things have to go right for Iowa. And even if so many of those things do happen, it still might not happen for Iowa. That I personally am not willing to go there. But some fans are built different. And if that's one of you, hey, have at it. Enjoy it. Penn State's a behemoth. But as we talked about earlier, with the commitment of Mo Bassett, the excitement that comes out of that, you would have loved to see Jack Forrest also jump aboard, but that's not going to happen as he's going to Oklahoma State. What we saw earlier in the week with Ross from Fort Dodge making his way to Oklahoma State, there's hope, but what else is going to change? And maybe it's as simple as this. Maybe we're going to see things even out a little bit more. You know, when the NIL era started, there were so many conversations about football and basketball and how it was going to change, that we were going to see, especially in football, that it was just going to be everybody's going to go to the same programs. And what we've learned here just a couple of years in, that's not actually the case. We've seen more and more depth be built. We've seen programs come out of nowhere and compete at high levels, like in Indiana. A Notre Dame team that many people thought their window of winning a national championship was closed, and they got there this season. And maybe for collegiate wrestling, we're also going to see that this is going to filter out a little bit more. And there aren't going to be the super teams that Penn State has built over the last 10, 12 years, but that's a good thing for everybody else. I think that's a hope for a lot of programs, not just Iowa, that's what we're going to see. And you look at that 2026, one of the more decorated classes in a long time, and of the top 5, none of them are going to Penn State. Maybe the worm is turning. We got basketball to get into. We will do that with Tom Kakert. He is from the Quad Cities, so we're going to get his perspective on Owen Freeman shutting it down this year, what Tom knows about this situation. Brock Harding, of course, his teammate, their senior year over at Moline High School. What is Brock Harding's future? We're going to get into that. A little speculation and a little fun. Plus, we'll talk about the women's win as they knocked off Minnesota on Thursday evening. We got some basketball talk still to come your way, and we'll get you ready for the matchup against Wisconsin. Iowa, just a 3.5-point underdog against the Badgers. What does that tell us? We'll do that as we continue. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less of at least 2 players' projections, and if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you're cashing out. This week, I'm all about the tight ends. Travis Kelce, we talked about that earlier this week. Dallas Goedert. I'm going more on receiving yards for both of them. Plus, you can take a look. I like Jalen Hurts to throw for some yards in this one. So you can go that direction as well. And what I love most, fast, safe withdrawals. When I win, my cash is in my account in as little as 15 minutes. Check out the promos, tail any of the super sweet Millie winners, big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and make sure you use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
Let's get to Tom Kakert, HawkeyeReport.com, part of On3 Media. Hello, Tom Kakert. Trent and Ken, how are you?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Doing well, and looking forward to tomorrow, NBC, these next three. And then Oregon, Washington at home, so kind of maybe eases up a little bit, but these next three will be no picnic. Trent doesn't like the matchup personnel-wise with Wisconsin. We saw the result of that game way back on January the 3rd. Obviously, it was embarrassing if you're a Hawkeye fan. What do you think could be different tomorrow that would lead to a Hawkeye win?
Probably a week ago, if you would have asked me, hey, you think about Iowa, Wisconsin, I would have said, boy, I think Iowa's going to come out and play one of their best games of the year to try to get revenge for that. That was an embarrassing. It
really was.
I was there, and it was
right.
It was non-competitive for like the last 6 minutes of the first half and the rest of the second half. It was like JV versus varsity, and I thought that but without Freeman, they start 2 7-footers. Their guards play well. It is going to be a tough matchup. Now, could there be some regression to the mean kind of things where I think Wisconsin's shooting like 41% from 3 in conference play or something. Ridiculous. They're shooting the ball so well. So and Iowa's given up I think teams are shooting 41% from 3 against them in conference. So it's just not a good combination, as they would say. Actually it's 39%. So I added a couple percent there for Iowa in terms of defensively, but you'd think some regression is coming for Wisconsin in this game, and you'd hope that maybe they make it competitive. I thought Iowa played pretty well the other night.
I did too.
Yep. I thought they played with a lot of heart, a lot of energy, moved the ball pretty well. They just had nobody who could guard Smith. And Kaufman-Wren is maybe the most improved player in college basketball.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't stop either of those guys, and that was that.
Tom, we know you have a close relationship with Brock Harding, being a Quad City guy, and also Owen Freeman after he moved in there to finish up his career at the high school level. Take us in what you're reading from it. I'm sure you have the opportunity to, talk to different people over in the Quad Cities and just what the takeaway is here. Owen Freeman, I know Fran said something long-term could happen. I would be shocked if this team was 17-6 right now, if he would have shut it down. But that aside, just your takeaway, knowing those kids like you do.
Yeah, and I can see why people would think that about Owen. But I just talking to just exchanging a couple messages with his family, and they were really concerned that there was going to that I'll say this: if it wasn't his shooting hand, if it was his non-shooting hand, I think he'd still be playing. I really do. And if it was another finger on his shooting hand,
it's his index finger, is that what it is?
Yeah, it's his index finger. So it's just if that got hurt further, then there's the potential, according to the doctors, for more permanent damage to it. So he's got to think long term, and so I get why people would think that, but I think if you have to look at it just as this specific finger in the issue. I know. Do you guys even want to dive into the Trilly Donovan thing?
Let's go.
So Trilly, Trent, do you want to explain who Trilly is?
Yeah, I'm not sure who this person is.
So he is an online persona, social media. He is the one that breaks a lot of news.
Hawkeye news or
no, just college basketball news. A former college basketball assistant coach or scout or nobody knows exactly what it is, but something like that. But he is an online persona that nobody knows who it actually is.
So it's not his real name's not Trilly Donovan.
Correct.
Yep.
Right. Yes.
Yep.
It's a play on Billy Donovan. But this guy gets a ton of information in. Tom, it's not that he's right more than he's wrong. This guy's really good. He has inside connections, and not just about guys entering the portal, but coaching news. This dude knows what's going on in college basketball. Fair way to put it.
He's pretty dialed in. By the way, on the female basketball, women's basketball side, his persona is Skim Mulkey, which I think is very funny.
That's awesome.
I think it's
how have I missed these? How have I missed?
Yeah, you got to follow along.
Yeah,
you got to follow along. So he is pretty dialed in. He's pretty connected.
Yeah.
And he put Brock and Owen as guys to watch. I think going into the portal potentially. I can assure you, 100%, in talking to Brock's family, that he is not. They've not discussed it. They've not entertained it. They don't plan on entertaining it. Now, if there's a coaching change, all bets are off.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you put that caveat with it. But I know Brock is not entertaining it. I have not spoken to Owen. I have not spoken to his family. But based on, Brock's family, Owen's family, and I think people would kind of feel, get a feel for some stuff if there was anything going on. But what happens then is, and Trent, you've probably seen some of this. It's people going after Brock and Owen because they think that they've just quote unquote quit on the team.
I thought Harding played his off the other night, Tom.
And coming off the bench.
He did. And he, accepted a different role.
Yep.
Came in there, played hard, played tough. But you would be shocked to see some of the garbage that he's had to put up with because his name got linked in this, that he was quitting on his team. And it's unfortunate. And that's, while I enjoyed Trilly Donovan's stuff and think it's interesting, I think sometimes maybe he needs to also look at that sort of perspective too, that he might be causing some problems for some young people in the age that we live in.
And speaking of the age that we live in, if indeed Owen Freeman is, if there are offers coming through his agent, because that's the way it would happen at this point.
I'll say this, guys. Yeah. He had offers last year.
Right.
He had significant offers last year.
And they'll be there again. And if he's not going to play in the NBA, and I don't think he's going to, I'm not saying he's going to get Hunter Dickinson type money, but there's probably $750,000, right? A year for him for his last couple of years. Why not take the money? It's there for you at this point, right? Why not take it? If that means you have to leave, so be it.
Nobody should blame anybody for taking a business opportunity.
Yeah.
They really shouldn't. I mean, it's just, all of us would do the same thing.
Without a doubt.
In the same spot. We've all left jobs for better paying gigs in our lives, and
didn't always work out.
It doesn't always work out, and sometimes the checks don't always cash later.
Yeah.
But,
and the guy I work with gets thrown in jail. But anyways,
I haven't been thrown in jail.
The founder of everyone.
No. Different guy. Okay. Hey, Tom, speaking of basketball last night, this women's basketball team, that was impressive. After the delays getting up to Minneapolis, all the headaches, they come out.
So what happened? Did the plane, had the plane mechanical problems?
No, it was de-icing 3 different times on Wednesday. Then they said, no, we can't fly. So then even Thursday morning, it took a while to get there. Finally get there about 12:30 yesterday. They come out on fire, 4 3-pointers in the first quarter. They're ready to go. Then a comeback by the Gophers, and they had a response. That was a really nice win last night, Tom.
That was, because that's a game that a couple weeks ago they were losing.
Yep.
They lost They lost a couple of games just like that. The Oregon game was one that comes to mind, where they came out completely on fire and then just went flat. I think they figured a few things out. Now, is it going to mean that they're going to go on a run to the Final Four? I'm not saying that at all, but I think moving Hannah to the 5 is everybody's kind of figuring out a role now. And I think playing Sita Fulter at the 4 has been a real stroke of genius. I mean, she is just rebounding her butt off right now. I mean, she had 14 rebounds last night. I think 13 points. Hit some threes, big critical 3. Taylor McCabe, huge 3. And they made their free throws in the stretch.
Yeah, because they weren't early.
Yeah, but late they were making them, and that's been the bugaboo with them. I think it was the Nebraska game maybe where they were just bricking free throws late. They're correcting some of the things that were ailing them and hitting some big shots. So big game coming up next for them against Nebraska, and that's because Nebraska's on the bubble. I was just looking at the Charlie Cream from ESPN has his bracketology thing up. He's 12 teams from the Big Ten in the NCAA tournament, but there's a bunch of them that are sitting right around 8, 9, 10. I think there's 5 or 6 teams, including Iowa, that are on the 8, 9, 10, 11 seed lines.
That is Tom Kakert from HawkeyeReport.com. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. A live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field. And the app, it's super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's just icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Back with you one final time, Locked On Hawkeyes. Thanks for being with us here as we talk all things Hawkeyes with you each and every day. That's what we do on the network, and we got you covered on the Hawkeye front. So it is Iowa, Wisconsin coming up on Saturday, a NBC matchup. Still incredibly odd with the new TV contracts that we have games on NBC, but here we are, and we'll get used to it, right? I mentioned a little bit earlier, you heard me talking about I don't like this matchup for Iowa. You talk about the loss of Owen Freeman, and in a way, Iowa was able to get out of it. Iowa played about as well as they can, certainly offensively, against a decent defensive team against Purdue, and it wasn't good enough. They had a shot to tie the game a couple of times, couple of looks at that one, couple of opportunities, and weren't able to do it. But Iowa played well and still came up short against Purdue. I don't think the difference between Purdue and Wisconsin is that much this year, but it's also looking at the matchups and the way that it's dictated. Now we'll see. If Iowa comes out, and it's not even if they give up points in the game, it's just the effort that we're going to see on the defensive end. Now, we heard from Riley Mulvey and Evan Bronze, and God bless both of those men, but when those are the two guys that are being trotted out before a matchup against Wisconsin, I think that says a lot about the way this season is going. If you would have told me back at the beginning of the season that we'd be getting ready for a matchup this deep into the year, and the two guys that are going to be on the dais, on the podium, talking to the media are Riley Mulvey and Evan Bronze, I'd probably tell you the season's going about the way that the season's going. This team is not very good. And the hope that maybe we had I think it's been sapped out of us. Now, if Iowa comes out, you anticipate they got to be aggressive, right? On the defensive end. Seeing Riley Mulvey actually hedging correctly, it was a thing of beauty. We're not talking about a ton here, but the back-to-back turnovers that he forced late in the first half, seeing a big with the ability and the know-how to actually hedge well on a screen and come out hard and then force the point guard back towards the half-court line like you're supposed to. Oh, it's great. Are we going to see that again? We'll see. The wing players for Wisconsin give Iowa trouble. I don't expect much. Mentioned that the game opened up at FanDuel. Iowa was a 3.5-point underdog. As we sit here late on Friday evening, that thing has jumped up, and now Iowa is a 5.5-point underdog. So the Badger steam is coming, and that shouldn't come as a surprise. We'll talk about it after it goes final. We got you covered there. Monday, a monster matchup for the Iowa women as they keep building up this resume and building up the wins. Now 4 wins in a row after the road win against Minnesota. This time, it's going to be more difficult heading over to Nebraska, but a little payback. Got to guard the 3-point line. We'll talk about that one coming up. That'll be a Monday evening affair. Got a little more wrestling coming up, and it's that time of year. Busy time. Baseball, softball, they're getting ready to get started as well. We'll get a little baseball coverage for you and give you a season preview for the players out on the diamond. This is a fun time of year and has a different feel with Iowa on the men's side. More than likely not going to be even a bubble team, and that's frustrating. But potentially some changes, a roster that's going to look different. Continue to hear from people from all kinds of different walks that Darren DeVries, if there is a change, remains a number one at the top of the list. And the reality is he'd be willing to listen. Can Iowa come up with the finances? That's another question, but it's out there. And I've heard it from so many different places and so many people that I respect, so many people that would know. We'll see. Can Iowa come up with the finances to make it happen? Fran McCaffrey to walk away, what is it going to be? Is it the full buyout? Is there some way that they can come to an agreement for Fran to walk away? As we see Mike Watson doing at Indiana, can something similar happen? Because it'll be a bad look. Look, if Iowa forces out Fran McCaffrey, nationally, it's not going to be a great look. People don't understand the intricacies of the Iowa job, and they see some of the successes, but not realizing those successes haven't been as high as the Hawkeye fan base wants. And it's things on a local level are always different than they are on a national level. You hope they can come to an agreement. It would be bad for the second time to let go of your all-time winningest coach. You did it with Dr. Tom. Now you'd be doing it with Fran McCaffrey. It just overall in basketball circles would be a bad look. But that's a conversation that we'll be having likely about a month from now. Iowa's got to get some wins if they're going to even qualify for the Big Ten tournament. We'll see. I'm not confident. Prove me wrong, Hawks. Let's see if they can do just that. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We will talk to you after Iowa, Wisconsin wraps up, and we'll be back with you next week, each and every day. That's what we do on the Locked On Network. Thanks for being with us. Until then, go Hawks.